Hi everyone, Mark Merrill with a Fact Files special update. The Maine Secretary of State slams the Federal Department of Justice. Surprise. Oops. Looky, looky here, Maine. Do you, as voters in November, really want a younger version of Queen of Denial, Janet Mills? Or maybe a more direct swipe at the federal government from another dipstick deflectocrat like this twerp of destruction, Shenna Bellows, Secretary of State, who keeps pushing your taxpayer dollars into the toilet? Really? Well, here's a portion of a story from the Maine Wire on July 30th on Ms. Bellows' stinging remarks against the Trump administration's Department of Justice. Shenna Bellows has refused to cooperate with the Department of Justice, you may have heard, over an attempt to confirm the integrity of Maine's elections, telling the DOJ to jump in the Gulf of Maine. Last week, a Michael Gates, the Deputy Assistant Attorney General of the United States Civil Rights Division for the DOJ, sent a letter to Bellows requiring information on the state's voter registration data. Included in the request is the following. Please provide a description of the steps that Maine has taken and when those steps were to be taken to identify registered voters who are ineligible to vote, as well as the procedures it used to remove those ineligible voters from the registration list. Please identify the number of registered voters identified as ineligible to vote for the time period of the close of registration for the November 2022 general election through present for each of the following reasons. 3 of them. Number 1 is non-citizen. Number 2, adjudicated incompetent. Number 3, felony conviction. I'd say those are pretty specific, wouldn't you, folks? The request comes on the back of the Maine Republicans, the GOP, claiming to have identified more than 600 voters who were registered twice in the voter database, with over 50 who had voted twice in the same election. Sounds kind of direct to me. In your face, Ms. Bellows. And now, folks, for a timely recap and rerun of an interview that Maine Wire Steve Robinson had with now State Auditor Matt Dunlap, who you see right here. About three to 4 months ago, Mr. Dunlap really encapsulated the entire Mills administration's lack of responsibility, under the law, of course, something she wouldn't damn well do, and as well as step in dog poo. And Mr. Dunlap also administered some more biting truth and facts description of the voting process, as well as misappropriations of COVID-19 funds for other spending towards taxation with no revenues. Here's a part of that one. The interviewer, Steve Robinson of the Maine Wire. But this is Mr. Dunlap.
Well, one of the things that has come up is that there are more findings in our audits of the Mills administration than there were in the LePage administration, which is true, except they had all the COVID money that hit, and that, because I was Secretary of State when the COVID money hit, and not so much the money. The rules don't change with the money. figure out how people could register their cars when the town offices were closed. How do you run a statewide election in the grip of a global pandemic? And in fact, at one point early on, we were talking about having an all absentee ballot election. And Julie Flynn, still the deputy over there, has probably forgotten more about elections than anyone in the country will ever know. She called me and I woke up at 3 in the morning in a panic. She said, who's going to issue the absentee ballots if all the town offices are closed? We don't issue them. The towns issue them. So, that was a lot of challenges to overcome. And sometimes, you had to improvise a little bit. But we've talked about with federal criteria for spending funds. I mean, they don't change their rules very easily, and it's up to them to make the decision whether an adjustment is something they need to worry about or not. Like I've told everyone in this, our job is to be picky. We're the proofreaders, if you will, because I was a proofreader for 10 years. If you look at all my work experiences, yes, I'm 60 years old. I do have about 75 years worth of work experience, but many times I was working 2 and 3 jobs at a time. So that's how that all adds up. But when I learned how to be a proofreader, the woman who trained me said you have to be very picky. If you're not sure if that should be a semicolon or a comma, you circle it and you ask. That's what we do. It's like, okay, they did a sole source contract kind of after the fact, we pointed out it's up to the federal clearinghouse to say whether or not they can live with that or not. But if we don't point it out, then we're going to go under peer review this summer. And we have to do it every 3 years. We're going to have auditors from Missouri and I think South Carolina in the office going over our processes. And we had our first one under my watch 3 years ago. It was one of our best ones ever. We have a great crew. But if you do things like look the other way or decide something's not a big deal, your peer review will be really bad. And that affects your ability to continue as an organization. It could force the state to contract out for about 4 or 5 times the cost. So we take our work pretty seriously, and we try to make sure we do a good job and it's of service to the agencies that we work with.
Kind of bottom line, if you don't mind, thank you, Mr. Dunlap, on that. Ms. Bellows, Mills, her lapdog, bootlicker is more like it, Attorney General Aaron Frey, Fecto in the House. What a joke for a House Speaker he is. We're going to get around to it in just a second here, folks, as we read the last paragraph of Ms. Bellows' response to Mr. Trump's DOJ on that request. This was going back 3.5 years, folks. The Trump administration DOJ wanted to have identification by Ms. Bellows, do some work for a change, the number of registered voters identified as ineligible to vote for the time period of the close of registration of November 2022 general election through present time for non-citizens, adjudicated incompetent, and felony conviction. But in a press release, Ms. Bellows barked out on July 30th as being flatly refusing to cooperate with the DOJ on the request. Quote, "The Gulf of Maine is awfully cold, but maybe that's what the DOJ needs to cool down. So here's my answer to Trump's DOJ today. Go jump in the Gulf of Maine." Bellows has consistently testified against election integrity measures during her tenure as Secretary of State and is a staunch opponent of the SAVE Act and the voter ID ballot referendum. Guess what, folks? You get to vote and kick this sorry Secretary of State person out of office, and not the Blaine House, as she so desires. Once again, even though Ms. Bellows, for a small person, has a big mouth with no content, consistently testifies against election integrity measures during her time as Secretary of State and is a staunch opponent of the SAVE Act and the voter ID ballot referendums coming in November. Well, my gracious sakes, how times change. It's terrible, isn't it, folks? It's just awful how she just treats people it's really too bad that she has no competence, no respect for Maine and American citizens, for that matter, even if it was another state, folks. None. I bet she doesn't even have children of her own, and if she does, God save them. That's all I can say. In the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, here's where we need to be. All of us joined together on FIRM, Fairness in Reporting Media. Your host, Mark Merrill, where it's always about truth, facts, reality, and common sense. And contact us anytime, 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, for those items. Our mission words from the start. Contact us at fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com, fairnessinreportingmedia@gmail.com. In the meantime, folks, stay safe. Peace to all.